Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Thank you for being here. My name is Carrie. Today we are going to talk about a little list of little books. And if you know me, I love a thick book. I love being just like in a world and in a story for as long as I possibly can, as long as the narrative and the story is still compelling throughout. And I realized that in the past few years, specifically I feel like in 2023, I feel like especially in the fantasy genre, which is where I tend to read the most of my books, I felt like so many of them were just losing me in the three-quarter kind of way through. And it felt like writers were writing just to have a long story. I don't know why fantasy authors are not allowed or not okay with putting out books that are within the 300 page range. I feel like nowadays we're seeing 400, 500, 600 pages and they're just kind of like they don't need to be that long. As someone, again, who loves long books, I found myself kind of dragging my feet through a lot of plots, and I think that kind of turned me the beginning of this year, end of last year, to really focus more on shorter books. I'm also trying to get back into literary fiction. I also discovered a author who is on this list more than once, who writes short books and writes them well. So we're going to dive into it. I separated it by genre, so you can look in the timestamps in the description box in case you want to skip around. Speaking of short books, saving yourself time. I would like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is listening.com. Listening.com actually takes textbooks, PDFs, emails, etc., and makes them into audio format, so you can listen to your textbook on the go, when you're commuting to and from class, when you are going for a walk. And then actually on their app, they have a one-click note-taking feature where if you hear a line that you really want to underline, you just click it on the app and they will take whatever you're listening to and highlight it so you can go back to it later. They also take out any kind of data tables and graphics and things like that so that you can see them on the app as well as you are listening. And that's pretty much their audience right now. I think about 50% of their users are PhD candidates, and then the rest are students and working professionals. So definitely check them out. Usually there is a 2-week free trial, but if you use my code in the description box, you will get an extra week, so you will get a 3-week free trial. I highly recommend, and thank you as always for supporting this channel. Once again, that's listening.com. So here we go. Let's start our list. We are going to start off with the genre of literary fiction. I'm kind of picky with literary fiction because I feel like a lot of books are sort of no plot, just vibes, and then the vibes are collected or concentrated in one or two just like gut-wrenching lines. Like, actually, not to call out this book, but Good Morning Midnight, I felt like I underlined so much. It had so many beautiful ideas and these moments, but that's all it was to me. Like, it kind of felt like a collection. It kind of felt like the author had one really beautiful line and then just kind of until we got to the next really beautiful paragraph. And I've kind of found myself experiencing that a lot. So I believe that these are all books that have a very clear plot, a kind of traditional storyline. So that's my disclaimer. There are plenty of other shorter books I could have added to this list, but I want to make sure that these are ones that you can sit down and are pretty guaranteed to enjoy if you have a track record of liking the books that I've liked. Okay, so litfic. What books did I pick? Starting off, this one is the shortest one. No, it's not. Okay, this is almost the shortest book on the list. I read it really recently and I had just a really fun time with it, and that is The English Understand Wool. This is 60 pages, maybe 65 pages, and it was just a perfect little story. We follow a girl who I believe is 17, and she has been raised with just the most obscene wealth you can ever imagine. Both of her parents seem to be loving and caring, maybe a little bit distant, but like that's kind of on point for incredibly wealthy parents. But she's constantly either living in this like basically a palace in Morocco, or they're flying off to Paris just to go to this like particular tailor that her mom likes. They are living a kind of luxury that none of us will ever experience in our lives. And then one day her mother disappears, leaves the hotel room, never comes back. And the story unfolds from there, but we realize that this book is actually kind of a series of letters, or more like the girl's diary, because she is now going to be writing a memoir about her life, because apparently this whole disappearance of her parents is a really big deal, obviously. So now she's being approached by all of these editors for writing a memoir, and so then it goes into kind of the publishing world and things like that. I can't explain it. It felt very different. Like the first chapter, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, to the very last page, it was just I thought it was really good, and because it was 60 pages, it just kept that pace up the whole time. I highly recommend The English Understand Wool. Next up, one of my favorite books of 2023, and that is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This one is tiny, 150 pages, let's say. This is a book that I feel like maybe has the least traditional plot. It's a little meandering, it's a little daydreamy perhaps, because a lot of this is memories and reminiscing, but I still think it was so incredibly beautiful that I didn't mind kind of not really knowing where we were going with this. We follow a man who's living in Paris while his fiance kind of like takes a break, I guess. And the break turns into many, many months. So he's living in Paris with his friends who he doesn't seem to love, but he ends up crossing paths with this bartender named Giovanni, and then they start a relationship. And part of the book is dwelling on that relationship. We know from the very beginning that it has a very tragic ending. This was just beautiful in so many different ways. I can't even describe it. I have underlined probably 140 of the 149 pages. Truly so beautiful, so sad. I highly, highly recommend Giovanni's Room. Please read it. Next up, I had the physical copy, but it is now gone, lost in my house, lost to time. So imagine I'm holding this book, and that is Lemon. I read this in one sitting. I bought it at the bookstore, walked across the street to get a coffee, and sat in that cafe until I finished the book. This was a book that I'm not sure I liked, but it is one that I devoured, if that makes sense. The story is told in different points of view, and it's sort of in an interrogation kind of setting, and then it kind of goes into more narrative, if I'm remembering correctly, but it's just all focused on this beautiful, perfect sister who was murdered, and depending on who's telling the story, you get very different views of who this person was, why she might have been killed. Again, it was a book that I bought, devoured, and thought about for a lot. So it was just a book that I couldn't put down, and I highly recommend it. For some reason, I think because of the cover being yellow and the one word title, I got this confused with yolk. So when I bought it, I was actually thinking like, oh, it's gonna be this kind of family drama, and it sort of was, but not in the way that I thought it was. So Lemon, check it out if you haven't already. I feel like other than The English Understands Wool, all my other litfic picks are very sad. So continuing with the sad theme, we have Lie With Me. This is a story of, oh God, do I even remember? Takes place in France. And it is about just this kind of doomed romance. I don't really want to spoil it that much, but it is just about these two friends who start a romantic relationship, and then growing up in rural France, what does that mean? We kind of know from the get-go that this is doomed, and so once you get to the end, if you want your heart just kind of ripped out, this book will do it for you. So that is Lie With Me. That was a rough one. That was a sad little book. And doubling down on the sadness, I now have a physical copy of this, thanks to my friend Perry for sending this to me. I would like to recommend small things like these. When I just recently found out that Cillian Murphy is doing I don't know if it's going to be a short film or a full-length film based on this book. This concerns something that I didn't actually know existed. It takes place in a small town in Ireland, and it's about something called the Magdalene Laundries, I believe it's called. And it's basically about what happens to women in a very strongly Catholic society when they have children out of wedlock, or they just do not act as a good, quote unquote, good Catholic woman should. And they are kind of forced into these incredibly horrible circumstances. We basically follow one man who is reflecting on this and what he does when faced with it. It was rough, but educational and really beautiful. So I highly recommend this as well, especially if you're interested in Irish history or Catholic history, I suppose. Small things like these, and a beautiful, beautiful cover as well. Next up, a much brighter topic. We are talking about sci-fi. The first book I want to recommend is All Systems Red. This is part of the Murderbot Diaries. I have not continued them, but I really want to. All Systems Red introduces us to the world where we are in the future, or we are kind of in just a different galaxy, universe, what have you. There are these things called murderbots, and they are robots, kind of a combination of like organic matter plus machine. They originally were for like murdering people, but now they've become basically glorified security guards. And so our murderbot has been hired by a research team who is going to be either purchasing or like renting out this planet to do their research, and they have come to kind of check out the goods. Okay, they don't want to buy a planet sight unseen, so they want some protection. Murderbot comes along, and what's really funny about Murderbot is that they have thoughts and opinions and a conscience and an ego, which Murderbots are not supposed to have because they messed with their government chip, and now they have free will, which they spend most of that streaming trashy reality TV because that's all they want to do. So really the book is just kind of introducing us to this particular murderbot. Of course, there is a crisis that occurs, and it was just a really fun time. I recommend this. I've said it before, I'll say it again, to the people who enjoy Gideon the Ninth. It very much had that kind of dark, sharp humor. It was a really good time, and there are a bunch of novellas, so if you enjoyed this one, you have plenty more to continue with, and it was just a really fun time. And again, that short story, I never got bored within it. Like, it was just action, action, action. A great finish, by the way, a great finish. That is All Systems Red. After that, I wasn't sure where to put this one genre-wise. This Is How You Lose the Time War. This was one of the first books I read when I started Bookstagram. I read it in 2020. I read it in 2021. I bought the physical copy in 2023. I really love this book. This is told in two different points of view and through letters back and forth. We follow two different secret agents who work for two different, I believe it's called the Garden and the something. It does not say. But anyway, they are engaged in a time war. So because we have time travel, these two different agencies send agents back in time to change something slightly so that in the future something else occurs, and then they will, eventually win the time war. So, go back 10 years and kill this person so that they don't have a baby that grows up to be the president that does, and they are kind of the top agents, and they're always sort of just cutting each other off and ruining each other's plans. And because of it, they kind of start taunting each other, leaving these messages. And it was just I really loved it. Really beautiful. Again, this is another book that I have underlined the hell out of. It's one of my all-time favorite books. This Is How You Lose the Time War. The next one isn't technically sci-fi either, but it's not quite fantasy, so I put it in here. I'm sorry. There Are Mushrooms. Does that count as sci-fi? This is What Moves the Dead, and its sequel, What Feasts at Night. Ooh. This is a short horror story based on The Fall of the House of Usher by Poe. Ooh, it just honestly... It was the cover that got me. Also, last year was my year of reading T. Kingfisher. I think she is just the most incredible writer in that she can write short books, teeny tiny books, and they hit. They're just wonderful. She proves that like a fantasy, or in this case a horror novel, doesn't need to be this like epic tale. It can hit you just as hard. It's kind of like those one sentence horror stories. I was just sort of like, this author and this cover, yes please. We are in a different world where we follow a soldier who is visiting, is it a soldier? Who is visiting a family friend. It's these siblings, and they're visiting because the sister of this brother and sister sibling duo is very sick and doesn't look like she's gonna pull through. So as our main character is hanging out in this sibling's house, things start to feel really strange. We see there's like a jump scare that got me. It's very gothic. There's a lot of like dark hallways at night, and then you see a nightgown going around the corner just as you turn around, and like the pattering of feet. There's a crypt. There's a lake with like strange villagers walking around. And there's a lot of fungus. A lot of mushrooms involved. I just highly recommend. I also always love T. Kingfisher's work with gender. It's explained much better in the book, but we also have our main character who uses a pronoun that T. Kingfisher just made up. And so you feel really enveloped in this world because there's vocabulary so specific to this story, but it makes so much sense to the point where it just feels you're introduced to it and then it's just natural. I don't know, she makes these worlds and she makes them really inviting, and I love that. So if you are looking for a kind of creepy short book to just gross you out a little bit, that is What Moves the Dead. Now moving on to fantasy, my favorite genre. Once again, kind of like I said in the beginning, I feel like fantasy novels and series are just being stretched out. They are so long, and I feel like with a little bit of editing, they could be shorter. And I just wonder, I understand like with things like Kindle Unlimited or something like that, where authors are kind of paid by the page, or like paid by pages read. I understand writing filler because you want people to read a bunch of pages. But for other like more traditionally published work and like a physical book, for example, I just wonder what the drive is or what the push is for these publishing houses to like have books with so much filler. Like what do we gain? I just wonder, because I know for a lot of books it's not just me of like, why could this book have been 100 pages less, you know? So I have been very happy to have stumbled across a lot of short fantasy work, and I'm excited to share. So starting with, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. This is part of a series, and that is The Mysteries of Thorn Manor. If you know me at all, you know that I love Sorcery of Thorns. It's one of my favorite fantasies. I love Margaret Rogerson so much. She decided to write a little Christmas novella because we were not done with those characters, and I really liked that she did this because she could have started a whole nother story. She could have made Sorcery of Thorns almost like a duology, or, you know, made it into a series, and she didn't. Which, you know what? At the end of the day, if she wants to write more about these characters, I will not complain. But I love that she wrote this novella because it gave us content, it gave us these characters again and that world again, and it tied up a few loose strings, but I feel like it didn't start us off on a whole new adventure, right? It was just sort of like in the aftermath of all the stuff that went down in Sorcery of Thorns. Are they okay? Like, what is everything cool now? Like, what do you do after a sort of not happily ever after, but, you know, a conclusion of a story? What happens to these characters? And I really loved it. So you do have to read Sorcery of Thorns first, but I just thought this one, like, if you loved Sorcery of Thorns, this was truly a gift to fans of that series, and we just got things tied up, and we got like a tiny little crisis, and I was just happy to be back in that world with those people again. So that is The Mysteries of Thorn Manor. Next up, a book that was a fever dream, and Cannot believe this. I will say that this one I did get a little tired coming into the third act, just because it was incredibly bonkers, and like that's the point. So if you are willing to read a silly book, very silly, I would like to recommend That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. There are so many now by this author that if you like this one, you've got plenty more to read. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon is exactly what it is. It's about a girl who gets drunk, saves a demon, and goes on a quest with him. Is kind of forced into this quest, if I remember correctly. And it's just silly as hell. They go into this like haunted swamp, and then I think there are pirates. They get to this town. There's like a rowdy pub inn place, and then truly, if you want a stupid, smutty, just bonkers time, I actually really had a good time with it. Normally I don't like over the top smutty things, but it was done in such a funny way. The main character cannot stop herself from being like, why is this demon so hot? Like, I don't understand, why is he so hot? Like, it's just funny. So if you need a laugh and you are looking for just a short book to do that for you, I highly recommend giving it a try. I've heard great things about her other books as well, but that's the only one I have dipped my toe into. That is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. Next up, I'm not done talking about her. T. Kingfisher. This was another book that I knew nothing about. I just knew it was by T. Kingfisher, so I got it. And that is Thornhedge. This was an incredibly short book that is basically a twisted retelling of Sleeping Beauty. We are following a fairy who lives in just kind of the woods, and her entire reason for living is to guard this tower and whatever may be in it. And we follow her through centuries, and we learn all the kind of different tricks and things that she needs to do to hide this tower, and like the stress that comes with when 100 years later someone decides to build a road next to her tower and she's like, fuck this. Just like really funny details. And then once we get to kind of the main plot where she runs into a knight who has decided, like, I'm a knight. There's a tower. I've heard there's something in it. It's my job to rescue it. What are we gonna do? It just becomes really cute and funny, and again, it was short, but she managed to make me feel so many things, so I really can't recommend it enough. It's very much describing, I think it's supposed to take place in France technically, but it's all about her living in this like bramble, like these bushes filled with thorns and berries and all this stuff, and I happened to be reading it while I was on vacation in the Cotswolds, which very much is filled with that exact kind of environment. So I just felt like I was in it at all times, even when I wasn't reading it. So it's just a very visual book as well. Truly a fun time. It's just funny too. She always manages to put a lot of humor into her books. So please, if you are looking for a short, sweet fantasy, Thornhedge. Next up is a book that I wish was longer. I wish it was not in the category of 200 pages or less. And that is When Among Crows. This is coming out this year, and it's by the same author as the Divergent series. I had not read Divergent, so this was actually my first Veronica Roth book, and it was really good. It takes place in modern day Chicago, but we are dealing with the kind of magic underbelly of the city, so it's a lot of like vampire fight clubs and witch bartenders and things like that. But we follow a human boy who is on a quest to help undo a curse that we don't really understand why he's so obsessed with undoing the curse, but throughout the night, I mean, this whole thing literally takes place over maybe the course of 2 days, I feel like. We go on an adventure with basically 3 main characters, and throughout the night we unravel why he wants to be undoing the curse, who the curse affects, all of this stuff. And it's tied to a lot of Polish legends, so All of the characters, I believe most of the characters, are from Poland, and so there's a lot of talk about like the homeland and like, oh, shouldn't you know how to speak Polish? And there's a lot of Polish language. Baba Yaga shows up at some point. So it had this kind of like old country feel whenever they talked about Poland, but then they're also, again, like riding the Chicago subway, streetcar, whatever you call it, in the dead of night, like they're in their cars blasting the radio. It just felt, it was like a really cool urban fantasy that, again, was under 200 pages, but I feel like it shouldn't have been. I would have loved if she expanded it a little more. I just wanted to be in that world for a little longer. So that is When Among Crows. Oh my god, and then last but not least, something I can't shut up about. I'm sorry, you're gonna hear it again. That is The 6 Deaths of the Saint. I read this on an airplane. When I got it from the library, or maybe it's on Kindle Unlimited, I don't remember. But when I got it, I was expecting it to be a proper, fantasy book length. I would say like 300 or so pages. And when I saw it was 30 pages. I was like, did I download it? Like, where's the rest of the book? This book made me feel deeply in just 30 pages. We follow, I don't even know how to talk about it because it's so short, I don't want to spoil it, but we're essentially following a girl who kind of pledges her loyalty to a prince and becomes his kind of holy warrior. And she is able to be revived anytime that she dies, and we kind of live the same life over and over and over. So I guess not revived, she is reincarnated over and over and over again. And so within 30 pages, we see her go through hundreds of these lives, still kind of following the same story, like a Groundhog Day. Most of the characters don't have names, but somehow there was still this kind of epic, heartbreaking romance. There was still a villain. There was still like this kind of world building and mythology to it, almost like a dash of political intrigue. Like, I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And I highly recommend. Once again, I'm pretty sure it's on Kindle Unlimited, but it was truly like my world was rocked. I was shocked at how much she could fit in. Like, normally I say that I'm very impressed by fantasy writers who can write standalones. Kind of like, that's why I love Margaret Rogerson so much, is that she's able to make standalones. I feel like nowadays when authors are being kind of pushed to write long series, they can kind of go a little slower with the storytelling, right, to stretch it out. But in a standalone, you need to build the world, have the entire story happen. We need to be connected to these characters in like 300, 400 pages. So I'm always very, very impressed with sci-fi or fantasy, like anyone who writes a different world. But for a short story, for 30 pages, I was so impressed, and so highly recommend it. The 6 Deaths of the Saint. This is the book that kind of inspired me to even continue searching for shorter books, because it hit real hard. And that is it, a shorter video for shorter books on my channel. If you have any more recommendations, please let me know, especially any literary fiction that you feel like has a plot that is followable. I'm looking for something with plot and vibes, if that makes sense. Let me know your thoughts if you have read any of them, and as always, let me know what you're reading right now. A lot of these came from you guys, so thank you as always, and thank you again to listening.com. There will be a link in the description box for a 3-week trial. Go save yourself some time so that you can read even more books, okay? Thank you as always for supporting this channel. It means a lot. So yeah, I will catch you guys next time. I believe my next video will be a plot summary video. I had to battle some neighbor construction for a couple days. The world just wasn't ready. It wasn't ready for me to film, but now I think I am. So I will catch you with the continuation of the Mortal Instruments. God help us, okay? I will catch you guys next time. Love to you always. Hope you're reading something great. See you then. Bye.